Hey everyone, welcome back. It's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So we've talked about heroes. Now we have to talk about the villains. And again, for the sake of this conversation, we're talking about launch lineup. We're not going to talk about post-launch content, whether that's expansion or whether that is a live service. We're going to talk about meeting the bare minimum in a launch title for a game called Avengers. So villains are where it's at. These are enemies, these are characters you have to fight against. They have to be engaging, they have to be interesting, they have to have good mechanics. And we're going to take all that and say that yes, obviously the hope above hope is that they would have good mechanics. But in terms of the bare minimum of game types and play styles, this, for the sake of conversation, we're going to say that any Avengers game would be cooperative. I can't imagine us. Yes, I assume you'd be able to play it solo, but any Avengers game is going to have a cooperative element, 4 to 6 players. Now, it's in my opinion that most game types should skew to 6 players because I think that's more interesting. But I also come from a heavy MMO play where I used to put together and used to manage 40-man raids. That is engaging to me. I like the bigger teams, and I think a game called Avengers should always have larger squads. But when it comes to the villains, this is what's going to keep people going back to game types, to raids, to in-game content, and to playing over and over and over again. You have to launch with a strong roster. Now, in my opinion, I am tired of Avengers Cosmic, basically. I do not want any more Infinity Gems. I do not want another story about Thanos and the Black Order. I am done with it. I am absolutely done with it. I don't even want, a major Kree plot at launch. You'd have it as a side story in a couple of missions, and you can build to Ronan the Accuser for later. But I don't want any of that to start with. For a launch title Avengers game, we have to find a balance of popularity, consumer interest, and engagement across the board. Now, between the comic fans, animation fans, and MCU fans, Loki is a absolute necessity. I think you have to launch this title with Loki as a villain. Maybe not the final boss, we could debate that, but I think Loki needs to be here right from launch. I think the mechanics would be interesting. I think you could do a lot of great things with Loki as a character and as a boss fight. Then I feel very, very strongly about this, and that is Dr. Doom. I love the character of Dr. Doom. He is an absolute amazing character, and I think for a launch title, Dr. Doom is truly, in my opinion, a necessity for this game. He should be the end game. He should be what everything leads to. Now, so that's Loki, that's Dr. Doom, I believe Red Skull. Again, we're talking about launch characters that can still go places in expansions and DLC. I think Hydra's a great opponent to have in terms of game types. I don't see any reason waiting for Red Skull and Hydra, so immediately have that. You immediately hit the ground running with those big 3. Now, it doesn't have to stop there by any means, because where there's Hydra, you also have AIM. And for this, you could end with the Scientist Supreme, or you could go straight to MODOK. It's, in my opinion, you go straight to MODOK. MODOK doesn't need big expansions. He doesn't need to headline anything. But he can be a part of a group story, whether it's Masters of Evil. But I think having MODOK there is another thing that is absolutely necessary. Then, so you have those organizations represented. You have Hydra, you have AIM, you'll have the enemies that go with them, which I think is also very important. So now we have those big 4. Another one that I feel like is really important is Abomination. I think Abomination is a great enemy. I personally wouldn't use the leader yet. I think the leader has enough content for a potential expansion. I would save him. I think he's a great character, and I think he could headline a really awesome expansion. I would save him. But I think Abomination is a great start to leading into a Gamma World story. Again, that's just me and my perspective. So, in terms of really interesting, unique boss fights. Then we also have what I think are secondary bosses that kind of roam the world, roam the levels that you can encounter and fight. I think this writes itself, in my opinion, but Crossbones, Scorpion, Absorbing Man. Again, this is just 3 off the top of my head. Bullseye is another one. These are characters that don't need huge narrative hooks, but that can exist in the world and that you can engage and fight with. The Executioner, the Enchantress, again, smaller bosses for hopefully a total of 12 spread across major story-driven boss fights and bosses that would continuously, spawn in the world and spawn in zones that you could explore and that these criminal activities would pop up with. And this would tie in with Hydra and AIM and all these organizations, and I think it would create something a little cohesive, but also enough variety and limited just enough. Again, if we have a hero launch roster of 12, I think we could do the same with 5 major villains, and then from those 5 smaller bosses to spin out of. Now, I'm interested in your perspective on this. Villains in the game. We're talking named villains. Major bosses, major story-driven bosses, and bosses that could spawn throughout over time in the world that you and your team could fight against that would regularly spawn, in addition to the big main bosses, the in-game bosses, so to speak. Thank you so much for watching and taking your time with us. Above all else and most importantly, stay safe, take care of others, and have a marvelous day. Bye, everyone.